Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. We're back on Michael's 93 Mazda Rx-7 Touring. Today, it's part 2. We're going to be taking care of all the fluids, filters, kind of some of the general mechanical inspection that we talked about last time. I don't have a lot of time tonight, so let's get started. Well, let's kick it off talking about fluids and filters. We're going to use the OEM Mazda filter that Michael provided us. We're going to run Castrol 20W50 in it. A lot of discussion about oils in the rotary community. I've always been happy with Castrol. Highly recommended for stock cars and daily drivers. Inexpensive, readily available, easy to grab a quart when you run a little low. For the transmission, we're going to run 75 weight 90 Valvoline with limited slip additive. We're going to flush that brake fluid out with some Castrol DOT 4 here. I've got a new FD fuel filter for it. Sorry, Wix fuel filter. For the cooling system, we're going to run some Mazda extended life coolant. I think this is like FL22. And we've got concentrate with distilled water. I've got a clean funnel, got my oil catch, got an extra tray in there to catch all the gear oil. So let's go ahead and get the stuff draining, and I'll show you guys what we need to do to prep for the fuel system as part of that. You're probably thinking to yourself, what does this have to do with the oil change or the fluids? We're already going to be pulling the wheels off to do the brakes. I'm going to go ahead and get them over to the wheel and tire guy, get these tires off, and get the rims over to the refinishers. Might as well save myself some work if I can help it. Alright, now that we've got the car back on the ground, we have the under trays all off, ready for us to do the work down there. Let's go ahead and quickly take a moment, pull the fuel pump fuse, and get the fuel system drained out so that we're ready to do the fuel filter while we're waiting on those other filters. You're going to want to locate your fuse box cover for the interior fuse panel, which is just by your left foot when you're sitting inside the car in the footwell. And in my case, on this US model car, it's the second over from the right on the top. So I'll pull that 20 amp fuse out, We'll let the car run for just a minute to burn up any of that last fuel in the fuel system, and then we can safely work on the fuel pump, or fuel filter, and I will also take the gas cap off. Alright, I'm reasonably convinced there's no fuel in the system, or, well, less fuel. We'll go from here. Alright, we're finally ready to drop the fluids out of this thing. I like to take the radiator caps off, the oil cap, and disconnect the battery just so I remind myself that I've got all the fluids dropped out of this. Taking the radiator caps off also helps just allow the cooling system to drain. This is going to be the messiest part of the job. I've already spilled a few drops. I should probably grab a paper towel real quick. So I've found that the easiest way to do this in my shop is just a 5-gallon bucket on one of my shop stools. You're going to want a number 3 screwdriver to take the plug out of the radiator. That goes for the stock radiator and most of these Koyos. But I'm going to go ahead and lower the car down a little bit so there's not quite a drop and it decreases the splash zone because this gets messy. Alright, now that most of the coolant's out of this thing, you want to go ahead and put the stopper back in before you forget and dump all your new coolant on the ground. I couldn't see the rubber O-ring here. It's really important that that's still on here. It was just hiding up inside this neck. Otherwise I would have been going fishing this evening. Cool. It's worth noting that there's still some coolant in the upper radiator hose here on the left-hand side, or the front right of the car based on the Mazda specs. Just be careful if you do want to drain that coolant out. You're going to have to move your air box and kind of tip the hose up, or disconnect it and tilt it down and let it drain down through the subframe here. I may still do that when we check the air filter, but for right now, let's get the worst part of this job out of the way: draining the block. So, in the middle plate, right above the oil pan level sensor, is a 14mm headed bolt in the side of the block, and that is your block coolant drain. Now, this is going to get everywhere. I mean everywhere. So I have this big splash tray, and it helps. There's a limited amount of room up here. And I have this motorcycle funnel. It's called a Forma funnel. It's just a lead sheet inside of a flexible casing. And I'm going to see if I can slide that up there to kind of catch some of the stream that's going to want to shoot out. If you don't have this stuff, just, I don't know, have a spare set of clothes on hand. Let me move this. Get this cracked open. man. Past me, put this on way too tight. Wow. Alright, let's get that funnel up there. Man. Good thing skin grows back pretty quick. Don't need a shower. All right, well, this drips out. Let's go ahead and get the oil draining. Why do I keep not grabbing my gloves? Oh, that was way too good. While that oil drains in the background, let's talk about the plugs here. First off, the coolant drain, it's not in bad shape. I definitely wrenched on it, kind of marred it up. It was way too tight. And the crush washer is pretty crushed. If you did not have a new one and you need to reuse this, go ahead and just take some like 320, 220 sandpaper and give this guy a sand until you start to knock those high spots off and you have an even finish across it. If you have a coolant drain that looks like this, don't worry, it's just a FC Series 4, Series 5 drain. It does the exact same thing, just a little bit longer. Honestly, it'd probably be a little bit easier to get to. But I happen to have a brand new Mazda drain. I'm amazed you can still buy these things. I have a new oil drain too, oil drain plug, because this one, man, that crush washer has been crushed really, really well. So we'll go ahead and just replace these. And what should we do next? I guess we should start getting that gear oil draining out of here. Okay, who noticed I goofed up and left the pan in it that I was going to use to catch the gear oil? But that's okay. We'll actually see how much oil came out of this here in a few minutes. I'll just grab another pan. We all make mistakes. I guess I should bring you guys over here. You guys probably would like to see what I'm doing up here. Okay, for draining the transmission, on the side here, I always like to take out the fill plug first. It's a like T55 Torx, and we're gonna go ahead and break that free, and I think it's a 23. Man, it's been a hot minute since I pulled that plug out. Woo! Guy was a little bit pressurized. It's kind of interesting. I lied, it's 24. It's the differential that has the 23 on it. I'm gonna grab a towel. Now, I usually wear gloves when I do this. I don't know why I'm not doing it today, but I've also barely gotten a drop on me except for some coolant. So this little guy here has a magnet on the end of it. I hope you guys can see that. And this transmission's in really good shape. It's just got a little bit of spikies on it. The fluid's pretty good shape. I can still see through it. So I don't recall if I changed the fluid years ago, but someone obviously did. Yeah, just a little bit of metal debris on here. So we'll go ahead and get this cleaned up and let that drain out. While this guy drains, let me show you guys some of the stuff up front yesterday that I was saying that we should take a look at once these under trays are off. With the under trays off, there's a lot more room just to get in here and take a look at everything. The condenser looks to be in really good shape for the AC system. I don't see any leaks out of the connections. Minor bent fins, nothing special. We can see that coolant leak pooling here at the bottom of the radiator. But you can really start to take a look. You know, the power steering boots look good. I don't see any power steering fluid leaks. The bushings on the sway bar look surprisingly good. You know, just everything kind of opens up here with that out of the way. This boot looks good also. I guess bellow looks pretty good. The front of the motor is nice and dry. I know you guys can't see that very well. And the OMP looks very nice and dry up there. It's hiding right back there. You'll just have to trust me. But everything looks good. You know, the turbochargers are dry. Again, it's very hard to get in here and take a look with a camera to show you guys what I'm seeing. The transmission, it's clean, it's dry. We did have that one little drip right here we'll have to take a look at. But overall, I don't see any surprises. The tail shaft, or the output gasket up there, I don't see any signs of weeping. And back here, outside of a little bit of corrosion on the clamps, I don't see anything wrong under the skid tray. The CV boots look good, no tears, just dirty. You know, just nice and dirty. Sure someone won't enjoy me spinning around like this with the camera. I don't have my flashlight, but hiding way up here is the fuel filter. So that is a above the head kind of a service. I have no idea why Mazda didn't make a really slick low bracket to put it like right here. I don't know. I've always wondered. I have made kits previously that just bolted onto here. It's just some hose and some clamps. It's not hard to do. I do like to keep it away from the exhaust, but other than that, that's about it. There's really nothing hiding under here. Everything looks nice and factory and original, so we'll go ahead. That gear oil should be out of there at some point, and we'll get back to it. Well, since I'm an expert at forgetting to press play or record, let's go ahead and get this drain plug in here. I guess I don't need this thing up in my face. Ooh, that was a maybe overly full transmission. Go for it. So you're gonna want to inspect the crush washer just like any of the on any of the drains that we're doing today. I know someone's gonna give me grief for not getting every drip of fluid out of these things, but you can be a lot more thorough than most shops would be if you have the time. The cooling system, for example, you could turn the heat on high and go ahead and disconnect the heater core hoses and blow that line out. You could try to get everything out by putting some low pressure air through the system. If you have a contaminant or something, that makes sense. But for normal use, for a normal flush, you're not going to do that. You're just going to be doing flushes regularly. That's the key. I am noticing this tranny had a lot of fluid in it. I'm going to be really careful about putting back the factory 2.4 quarts, 2.5 quarts. My brain is fried. So we'll go ahead and leave this thing plugged and look at filling it while the diff is draining. I'm trying to think what else I can show you guys, but I'm sure I'll come up with something. Okay, so looking at this, that transmission had at least 4 quarts of fluid in it, and that's way overfilled. It's kind of got a green tint to it too, so it's definitely cheap gear oil. Might have been done at a service center or something. I'm seeing some yellow marks on here that are that indicate like a Jiffy Lube or something did this service. This is why when you get an FD, unless it's been documented this has been done, you do not want to take your car replaced like that. Please don't. For these drain plugs back here, I really like these cheap offset wrenches. I actually bought these in Japan and brought them back home with me in the clearance bin from Up Garage. But we'll go ahead again, take a 23, we'll break that fill plug. And then we'll come down here, take a 24, and get this thing draining. I'm just risking my luck today without gloves on. And I hate gear oil. Asked me one day about gear oil baths. It was, oh, never get this stuff in your hair. All right. Give this thing a little bit of airflow. Yeah, this is definitely the same green tinted Super Tech, I believe is the only gear oil I've seen like this the stuff they sell at Walmart. But I'm gonna go ahead and get these cleaned up, and I'll be right back. Before I forget, your diff has a magnetic plug in it too. About 1/8 of an inch of metallic buildup. You really have to like dig down into there. It's kind of a little cavern or recessed area. 1/8 of an inch is perfectly normal, and you know, just get it cleaned up really well. If you have any chunks or anything that come out of here, you know, really pay attention to that. If you can get a light up there and watch me make noise, but watch the fluid come out. and look for any chunks. All right, we'll let this drain. I'll keep cleaning. Well, let's go ahead and get some fluids back in it. Again, I'm not gonna let every single drip coming out of here. There's plenty of fluid still trapped up inside there. It is worth noting, please look out for double stacked crush washers. I've seen it before. You end up with a leak or there's something wrong with one of the surfaces. Just take a quick look, inspect everything. I'm doing all of these things just like without thinking about it, probably because I've done it a few too many times. But yeah, that was pretty painless. Let's go ahead and load up our filling apparatus for these for this gear oil. A couple of years ago, I bought one of these Motive power fills, not realizing at the time it's just a modified garden sprayer. And don't get me wrong, it's been a fantastic tool, but I'm pretty sure this is something you can make at home pretty simply. But this was on sale. It's done a great job. It's got a scale on the side, and I just keep 75/90 on it, in it. And just like everyone else for other fluids, I just kind of hand pump them with those little bottle fluids. But this thing works pretty well. I've been really happy with it. It's saved me a lot of mess, and it's definitely made my dosing more accurate. The worst part is just filling it. I really should probably start buying jugs of this stuff, 5-gallon jugs of it versus these little quarts, but I don't do this enough to justify it. And yeah, I realize the irony that I can justify the filler, but I can't justify buying the fluids and the quantity that I use them. Overkill is so much fun. So, while these guys drain out, let's talk about transmission fluids really quick. I'm sure I'll get asked, why are you using like generic Valvoline 75/90? And the reason is that when you get a car that you haven't owned before and you drain crappy generic fluid out of it like that, like I said, there's still fluid inside that transmission you can't drain out of it. Go ahead and run new, fresh 75 weight 90 through it that's high quality and drain it out in 1,000 miles, 500 miles. If you need it sooner than that, drive the car hard, drain it out in 100 miles. The key is that this fluid is going to help clean out and dilute what's in the transmission. And after that, you can start looking at using a Redline product like 75/90 or their MTL. I've had some good luck running a common fluid that the Miata guys run called Smurf Blood, which is kind of like the mix of a couple of fluids. Definitely looks Smurf Blue. But there's also other great options from Amsoil, even Royal Purple if you like running that. I don't run a lot of Royal Purple products. But yeah, flush your systems out first. Flush your transmission, flush your differential. In that regard, if you have the time and the weather permits it, flush your cooling system. Put only distilled water in it. If you're really worried about buildup in the, someone hasn't changed the coolant in years, like I've had several cars, if it's not going to be freezing out, go ahead and just fill that thing full of distilled water, run it, heat cycle it several times, and then flush it out and then refill with the proper coolant. It applies for all of the fluids in this car, even the gas to an extent. If you can, drain the old gas out. This car only sat for 2 years, and thankfully he ran non-ethanol from a local station, so it really wasn't that bad. It just, definitely had to dilute it with some fresh gas, and you don't want to push a car on unknown gas. Just the basics. You guys, I'm sure, have heard this before. I'm just restating it for fun in case someone watches this video who's not familiar with these cars, and that could be a lot of people. Who knows? I don't think I'm quite that entertaining though. Should probably keep these filling. All right, let's get this thing filling. We're starting with 6.5 quarts. We want about 2.5 in the transmission, so we'll pump this up. I only like to put a couple of PSI into here. I guess you could use the Schrader valve on the side, but I never have. I'd rather go slow with gear oil. I gotta put some like 3-in-1 on that. Not sure that helped. All right, we'll just let that fill, take a couple of minutes, and we'll be back. Okay, I had to check real quick. We've got the factory 2.6-ish quarts into the transmission, and I'm going to put just a hair extra account for the amount that the line took up, which isn't a ton. So we'll probably go ahead, call it good. Yeah, we'll call it good right there. We'll let that drip dry for a minute. We'll get the drain plugged in, and let's get this moved over to the differential. All right, I gotta add a little more air. This time the diff's gonna take about 1.4 quarts, and we don't have to account for the hose length. So we'll pay close attention because this one will overfill. In fact, I'm gonna grab a towel real quick. Can't be long here. Oh, it's right there. Yep, that was it. We've got the diff and the transmission refilled. I think we'll go ahead and get that little coolant fitting replaced that I talked about in the last episode. And after that, we can get the oil and coolant back in it. And I am obviously putting the worst job last, changing the fuel filter. So let's go ahead and get that coolant filter or coolant quick disconnect replaced and go from there. Well, we're gonna have to try handheld here. It's a really tiny area. This microphone does not help, but let's see if I can show you guys that. That right there is where the quick disconnect goes. Now I'm gonna take a really close look at that hose, because when the oil pedestal right above it leaks right down on top of that hose, and it eventually swells. Eventually swears and tears. So we got a new Mazda one from the parts bins upstairs. Just slips right on, has all the O-rings and everything we need already in it. And I might even put a constant tension clamp back on it, but we'll see. Let's get this knocked out. So don't forget to put a little bit of light lubrication on the O-rings inside this thing. Make sure it's still nice and clean, which this one is. But this will just slide right in there. I'm going to keep the screw clamp for now. The hose has a little bit of an indent in it from it, so I'm not going to switch it out. Nice and simple. All right. Okay, It's nice and on there. Show you guys it real quick. I try and go wipe my hands off. So yeah, there's the factory quick disconnect reinstalled. You know, there's probably nothing wrong with leaving it how it was. I just like having this car nice and factory. And speaking of which, let's take a look at this coolant hose up here. I want to see why it's leaking. I think I'm just going to take it out. And I'll bring you guys back after I get out of there and see if it's delaminated. Well, I'm probably going to go through a ball of Gojo by the time this episode's over. And probably a couple of Band-Aids. But, you know, that's just part of working on cars. So let me show you guys what I see here. Very first thing, I don't use these style of hose clamps anymore. Let me grab what I use. I should have done that. So I will generally stay with the constant tension clamps now. I, for some reason, over a decade ago, thought these were a better option. That's not the case. And you can see why right here. It's actually taken chunks out of that hose. And the other style I'll use are, I think it's like a full wrap hose clamp, and if I remember I'll put a link in the description. But instead of this being exposed here, it's just a solid band of metal which protects the rubber hose here. Inside the hose itself, let me grab my light. Okay, you can see that the coolant has started to kind of come through the ends of the hose there. And I've seen this happen where it kind of leaks here due to corrosion. I see a bunch of corrosion buildup on there. So I'm going to replace this hose. Otherwise it's in good shape. I believe it was one of the things we replaced. You see the upper neck is just fine. But down here it corroded, so we'll want to clean that off really well and replace the hose clamps. Hopefully that'll solve the problem. Otherwise, I didn't see any other leaks that we really need to address. So we'll check upstairs, see if I have one. I'm 99% sure I do. But let's get that swapped out. Some days it pays to be a parts hoarder, I guess. Got a new hose, new constant tension clamps. I'm going to put just a squirt of WD-40 into the ends of these. And that's just going to help slide onto that aluminum. And we'll use just a drop of, I'm sorry, not a drop, geez, things dripping everywhere. Use a little bit of Scotch-Brite to clean the mating surfaces real quick. I think I've got some white or gray around here. Red's pretty aggressive. Okay, we've got a nice clean mating surface up there that you can barely see. Maybe can't see. And yes, I finally put gloves on. If anyone's screaming at me, why don't you just put gloves on? Well, it's because with the current supply chain shortages, my favorite $8 box of gloves is now like $38. But so be it. Let's take a look at those belts. The outside one has obviously been replaced. The inside one, I believe, is original. I actually see the N3Z118381 on there. So we'll take a close look at that up top. I'm looking at the wire pump now, the wrap. I actually don't see any cracks. I wonder if that was a new belt 10 years ago, but I think we'll go ahead and get it swapped out. So I'll get this installed. I'm not going to bother making you guys watch me do that. So before I forget, because I already forgot once, for the transmission fill plug, I like to clean it off with a wire brush here and just put some ultra black RTV on the threads because it's what I have. You don't need a ton, just enough to get a smear on it. But we'll go ahead and get that reinstalled. You guys can figure this out. Well, we've got the oil in. This car with a single oil cooler, since it's a touring model, only is going to take about 4.5 quarts. You can overfill these a little bit if you're doing a track day. It doesn't hurt them. But I'm trying to put this just back so the dipstick reads perfect. So I've got that half quart in. Close it up. And we'll go ahead and start with the coolant next. Make sure your funnel is nice and clean. I highly recommend these coolant funnels. It's the only thing you should be using for your rotary engine. I don't care if that's first gen, second gen, third gen. This is the best way to bleed the cooling systems in these cars. I'll put a link somewhere if I remember. And it's always good practice. Start with the distilled water first. Watch your AST so that you don't flow over. But this way, if you have any leaks, you're only dumping water on the ground, not $20 a gallon coolant. Do a quick check under the car. I don't see anything. Looks good. We'll put some coolant in it. Ooh, brand new jug. I'll show you guys a great trick for bleeding these. Go to your rear throttle body coolant hose. Very carefully pop that guy off, and just, this goes down to the back of your block, and just keep adding coolant until coolant starts pouring out of there. Alright, that was it. We'll put just a little bit more concentrate in to balance that out. Most of this will get sucked down when the cooling system heats up the first time, but we won't bleed it today. I'll cover this up with a towel for now. All right. Well, I hate to say it, I've hit a really good stopping point for the day. I just don't have enough time to do the brakes and the fuel filter today. Swear I'm not putting off doing that fuel filter, but maybe I am. So next time, we'll take a look at that. I'm gonna have a friend stop by, we'll knock these brakes out, and hopefully, I gotta decide if I'm gonna do that before, if I flush the fluid before or after I change these rotors and pads out. We'll see, just depends on when I have time. Let me really quickly show you guys the fluids that came out of here today, and then we can wrap it up. Well, there we are. We were a little low on oil, overfilled on transmission fluid. And I'd say that coolant's about 10 years old, probably since the last time I changed it, well, over 10 years ago. But not bad. Again, this is why you don't want to go to Jiffy Lube. This is why you want to make sure you check your oil regularly. And please flush your coolant more regularly than every 10 years. It should be done every 3 to 5. These motors are so problematic with coolant seals. Why risk it over a $150 service? But that's gonna do it. We made some good progress. Still have a lot of work to do. I'm going to leave all the under trays off until we do some cleaning. Hopefully this thing will be off the lift here in the next couple of days, but that's going to depend on how quickly we can get those tires back and we take care of some of the other things we want to get done on this car. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you found some useful information, and if I remember, I'll put links somewhere to where you can get a lot of these things, but we'll see you guys next time.